morning to everyone. Thank you for organizing this very large event. And I want to introduce first the City We Need process. So this year, the Future of Places conference is placed under the banner of the World Urban Campaign. The Future of Places has joined the World Urban Campaign, and this will be the second Urban Thinkers Campus since the first one, which started in Caserta in October last year, 1 month after the first PrepCon for the Habitat-Tree Conference. So I would like to introduce the World Urban Campaign for those who don't know it. It is primarily, first and foremost, a campaign to change our urban future, which is a jeopardized future based on unsustainable practices, unsustainable planning, management, unsustainable business practice, as we know. And we need to change. So the campaign was launched in 2010 at the World Urban Forum 5 in Rio de Janeiro, bringing together two former campaigns that were established after the Habitat-2 conference in 1996. So to date, we have 118 organization networks and platforms representing about 6 million people. So it has its own governance with a steering committee chaired by Professor Jenny Birch, who is going to speak after me. And beyond being united by the same cause, the campaign is meant to define this new urban paradigm that we are going to discuss today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. And the campaign is meant to propose what we call the City We Need. The City We Need was launched in New York last year before the 7th World Urban Forum with Michael Bloomberg, who is Special UN Envoy on Cities and Climate Change. And it was the first draft, and it has currently 9 principles that are in the making. This is a work in progress, and this Future of Places here is meant to contribute to those principles. And I believe that at this conference we are going to address a number of those. We have the City We Need as a unique identity and sense of place. The City We Need is well planned, financed and governed. The City We Need is resilient, it is inclusive, it has a human scale. So here you have already a lot on the map. So the City We Need will be, at the end of the day, the Partners Manifesto for the Habitat-Tree Conference and the implementation of the New Urban Agenda after the conference. So member states, it's going to be a negotiated document. The City We Need is a negotiated document of all the partners. Member states have their own intergovernmental negotiation processes. You see that on the left-hand side, in which partners are involved in a way. But the idea is to meet together, to have all the partners involved before the Habitat-Tree Conference, and to be well prepared, put forward a compelling proposition, a manifesto to the member state before they release the draft of the new urban agenda. And Jenny Birch is going to speak more about that. It's a very important process. We don't want to be like at Rio +20 where partners were not united, not enough united, and could not actually have what they wanted in the outcome of the Rio +20 conference. So at Habitat-Tree, we need a bit more consensus before. So to carry out partners negotiation, the World Urban Campaign has proposed the General Assembly of Partners. And actually, Jenny Birch is also now the president of this General Assembly of Partners. And this is a deliberative device for the partners before the conference. And of course, the General Assembly of Partners will have time and opportunities to meet with member states and discuss. So the General Assembly of Partners has an executive committee that will meet on Wednesday here in Stockholm, and will work on the integration of all the inputs to the city we need. So from this Urban Thinkers Campus, from the 28 Urban Thinkers Campus that will be organized before February next year, from the national urban campaigns. We had a national urban campaign launched last week in Cairo. Their national urban campaign is meant to actually prepare a position also, and other national urban campaigns will do so. So all these inputs will be combined in the city we need. So this is your chance to include the issue of public space for the Habitat Tree Conference and to be in that compelling proposition to be brought forward to member states. So this goes in parallel. You have put here the two processes. On top you have the intergovernmental negotiations, which are now led by member states. There is a Habitat Tree Secretariat, there are policy units established, there are issue papers drafted, there are national reports, there are regional reports. So all this will come into the new urban agenda. Of course, the partners will have opportunities to intervene in that process, but partners need to be very well prepared in that parallel process of the city we need. So there will be thematic statement coming out of the Urban Thinkers campuses. There will be a country partner statement coming out of the National Urban Campaign, and also these 14 groups that Jenny is going to explain will also contribute to that process. So there is also a roadmap and a timeline that I believe Jenny will explain. So there will be different meetings leading up to the Habitat Tree Conference. And the idea is to present the city we need before the new urban agenda draft, so that governments can hear from what the partners have to put on the roadmap. So the model of the Urban Thinkers Campus was elaborated in Caserta, as I said. One month after the PrepCom, we felt that the partners needed to be engaged at their own level. So we had a meeting which was extremely participatory, and that's the idea of the campus, is to open the debate globally, and not only to the regular partners, but to all those who feel can provide input to that process and to be prepared for the Habitat Tree Conference. So it is fed by, so we expect all the new ideas to come into the city we need debate, and then there are 4 types of sessions contributing to that process. You have the Urban Thinkers session, bringing all the participants along different themes that are sub-themes of the main theme of the campus. You have the constituent group session, bringing peers along a central theme of the campus. Then you have the urban labs, data presentation, concept, new models, innovation, best practices, etc., that can feed also the global debate, the city we need debate. We have drafting session where all the constituent groups negotiate the city we need position for the end of this conference. And in parallel also we have media session and other events. So in Caserta, for example, we had an urban journalism academy, we had a digital media academy, and we had urban cinema. So here I understand there are other things which are going on, and there is a media session. So yeah, in the Future of Places conference, we have 5 constituent groups. In reality, there are 14 groups, yeah? But they were collapsed in 5 different groups. So you have the research and academia, which I believe a majority of you are coming from those groups. Civil society and grassroots organizations, government that include local governments, professional, private sector, and foundation. And finally, I would like to remind that at the end of this conference, you are expected to contribute to the city we need. And there are 3 levels in the city we need. So there is actually that little document that is downloadable. It's on the World Urban Campaign website. So that was the first position. So this is our Bible for this conference. This is our base. And we have to elaborate on that base. The first part is on principles for a new urban paradigm. The second part is the policy and legislative framework we need. And the third part is about urban solutions for the city we need. So these urban solutions are a new feature. They were not in that document, but this is really important. And the idea is to bring best practices, innovation, new business models, etc. And at the end of the day, the drafting committee of this conference, the role of the drafting committee is to pull together all your contribution of those 3 days into recommendations that will go into the city we need. Yeah? There will be, as I said before, 28 Urban Thinkers campuses, so this is also on our website. And so public space in the new urban agenda is the first on the list after the experimental campus in Caserta. The idea also, there is a planning process. We need to have the new urban agenda ready before March. And there was a decision that all the inputs on the principles should be available before September. So as much as possible, we will include all the outcome of those urban thinkers campuses, but those who come before September are more likely to influence the final document. So all those campuses address the 9 principles of the city we need, and they are also, in a way, contributing. So those experts who will be also in the policy unit of Habitat 3 will have the chance to influence the thematic, the themes of the policy unit for Habitat 3. So we can distribute those documents after, but this is important to keep in mind. So I'll stop here. I was told to be very short, and Jenny is going to elaborate much further. So Jenny is the president of the General Assembly of Partners, and she's the chair of the World Urban Campaign Steering Committee. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. You've just received a good deal of information. I'm sure it's a bit confusing. I'm going to give you some more. What I want to do is to fit what's happening here into the larger picture of the global conversations that you've heard about earlier this morning and that are continuing. We heard this morning from our minister that there are 3 global conversations going on in the world today. One is that of economics. The second one is that of inequality, and the third is that of climate change. When we talk about cities, we are talking about the need to address those 3 conversations. And indeed, we know this is important because let me give you 3 pieces of data. First of all, today, urban populations are 54% of the world's populations, and we will probably go to more than 3/4 of the world's population. But we need to remember, of this 54% of the population today, 1 billion people live in slums. This is not something that we want to continue in this urban growth. We heard today that 300 cities produce 50% of the world's GDP. Well, there are more than 4,000 cities of 100,000 or more. What's happened to those 3,700 other large cities in terms of their production and contributions to the world's GDP? And lastly, when we think about climate change, cities produce 80% of greenhouse gases that are floating around the world today. We need to address that too, and we can through the immediate things that are going to be happening in the next few months and years. Now, in addition to the Habitat 3 conference, there are 3 other things that are happening. First of all, this July, there is a global conference called Financing for Development, trying to figure out how we'll pay for the development that will happen in the future. Secondly, in September, there is the conference on the Sustainable Development Goals. Now you have in your packet a nice little pamphlet, a little piece of paper, you might want to look at it, called Sustainable Development Goal Target 11.7. Let me tell you, we had in the past year an enormous fight to convince the member states of the United Nations that cities were important. You may laugh, but it was no laughing matter. At any rate, the victory was won so far with regard to having this Goal 11. And I want to point out that within the Goal 11, there are seven targets. You're seeing the seventh here. There are 6 others. And as the mayors said this morning, it's important to think comprehensively and holistically about cities. Public space is, of course, essential to the sustainable city, the livable, the safe, and the wonderful city that we're all trying to create. But so is housing, so is transportation, so is thinking about environmental impact, so is planning, so is dealing with resilience. And these are the other targets that we have to keep in mind when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals and the framework that will be passed this September. The third conference that is occurring, of course, is in Paris, which is the Council of Partners Conference, which is the climate change part. And I'm sure you hear over the course of this meeting some of the instruments that are being put forward so that cities will have a role in dealing with climate change. And after all these things happen, the financing for development, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the COP21 conference, we will have the first international global conference, which is Habitat 3. And you have in your document one of the policy papers for Habitat 3. Now let me talk a little bit about that and what we're doing here with regard to participation in Habitat 3. Habitat 3 has sort of 3 components. One component is the knowledge component. How do we produce the knowledge to come out with an outcome document that hopefully will represent the global consensus of what needs to be done, that we, the citizens, can take back to our countries, to our mayors, and say, listen, this is what the world thinks should be done, why aren't you doing it? Or how can we do this together? And this is what this meeting is about. How can we create public space that is sustainable, create safe cities, resilient cities, prosperous cities together? So the knowledge component consists of the national reports. Many nations have put them in. You can see them on the website. The second part of this all is the policy component. Christine referred to the policy units. There are 2 contributions to the policy component. One is the policy papers, of which you have one in your packages here, the one on public space. There are 21 others that deal with 6 different areas that the new urban agenda will be dealing with. And those 6 areas are social cohesion, urban frameworks, the governance or the financing that we were talking about before, spatial development, into which public space fits along with planning, the urban economy, urban ecology and environment, and urban housing and basic services. Of these 22 papers, 10 entities called policy units are to be created. The policy units will be created in the next month. They will consist of experts drawn from around the world, nominated by their countries, by their member states, and by other stakeholder groups, that will take the inputs that are coming in through the stream of knowledge, both from the national reports, the policy unit papers. The policy unit papers, by the way, were written by the UN agencies, so they represent the UN agency perspective on what the topic is. So when you read the policy paper on public space, which you have in your packet, you can comment on that, and you're meant to comment on that. So that inputs also will come from regional and thematic conferences that will be held in the next few months. And the inputs will come from us. The inputs will come from us through the City We Need. The inputs will come from us through online contributions that we can make in the next few months. And that comes to the third part of what Habitat 3 is all about. And that is the engagement part. The engagement part is us. The engagement part is the organizations that are coming together to create logical, clearly stated, well-evidenced positions to bring to the attention of the member states that these are the needs we have for the new urban agenda. And that's what we're about today, is to create these logical, rational, well-supported from the point of view of scientific evidence and from local experience, those things that we know so well, that you've heard so beautifully this morning from the two mayors talking about their experiences and what's important in their cities. This is what we will bring forward through a systematic way. The systematic way from the point of view of citizen participation, civic engagement, is this new platform that has been created last April called the General Assembly of Partners. This is a second special initiative of the World Urban Campaign, and it will be meeting several times before the creation of the Zero Draft for the New Urban Agenda. It was the aim to bring together what before was a cacophony of voices towards what might be sustainable urbanization. It will bring together, we hope, with your cooperation, your participation, a good, solid view of what we believe is the city we need for the future. So thank you.
Dear conference participants, I would like to begin by welcoming you all to Stockholm, which is now my city where I live. After having spent 17 years in Africa, doing different things, the last 6 years I was in Nairobi working for UN Habitat. So for me it's great to see all of you here, but the summer has just begun here in Stockholm. A specific welcome I would like to give to my former colleagues in UN Habitat. I'm happy to see everyone here in this very place, because this is the place where I grew up in the 50s and 60s, in a different surrounding, in a very different surrounding. In those days, this whole area was an industrial area, and mainly, I would say, a working class area. This building was a mill factory, and where I lived on a small island, a little further out, we'll pass it tomorrow, I think, when we go to this place in the archipelago. There was also a big industrial production, a mill production. And the interesting thing with that little island was the planning of how to live there, because it was all organized and supported by the Association of Cooperatives in Sweden, which played a very important role in establishing and running the industrial production, but also in planning and designing the housing and infrastructure for the whole island. In my time, we lived 450 people on this small island. Today, there is a lot of transformation going on and building of new luxury apartments, very expensive. It's going to become a high status area in Stockholm because of its location. You can see close to the sea and in a very also close distance to Stockholm. You can take the boat and get straight into Stockholm. As children playing on this little island, we had a lot of space. There was a lot of open places on the island. Now there is going to be 6,500 people living on that island. And you can see the difference, the transformation, and the total shift from this small sort of social-oriented area into something completely different. So I think globally we're facing a new situation, and there is a need for a new urban paradigm. The old paradigm focused on singular issues, housing and basic services, etc., The new paradigm needs to accommodate the complexity of urban systems and promote interaction among its overlapping functions, such as livelihood, mobility, equity, health, etc. Public space is the respiratory system of urban systems and the platform to humanize cities. So how do we create a new urban paradigm? Game-changing global processes, as we heard here, are taking place. They are actually at the doorstep with the new development agenda, the sustainable development goals, and the upcoming Habitat 3. So we are actually facing a historic opportunity, I would say, to try and influence these processes. But there is no guarantee that public space will be featured. So it's a very important moment for us to strongly promote this issue as an important element of the new urban paradigm. I'm happy to note that the Future of Places has become the largest gathering of public space experts from all around the world, more than 1,400 participants and representation from 80 countries and also representations from 500 institutions. I'm impressed, I must say, with the achievements you've made so far and the way this issue has been promoted through your hard work and engagement. You have assembled here, all of you, to contribute to the rich discussions on public space. You represent the many stakeholders that make up the complex urban systems. To get the most out of our discussions and to try to absorb the outcome of your important deliberations, Future of Places has assembled a drafting committee to capture all of the reporting and observations and to synthesize this into a policy-oriented outcome document. And we also have document as background for our discussions. And they will be further used in the reflections in our constituent group discussions. All of these documents will be carefully crafted and promote the principles gathered during Future of Places 1, 2, and 3 to influence these global debates towards Habitat 3 and the post-2015 development agenda. But we need your help. Each morning, the drafting committee will provide you with an update of the progress made and the reflections from the previous day. The task is yours to engage in the debates, labs, and constituent groups, and steer these discussions into a productive and active-oriented orientation. If we are able to do this, we have a chance to contribute to the construction of a new urban paradigm and influence the upcoming global processes where the urban agenda is being discussed and where the issue of public space will be included and should be clearly included as an important component. Progress has already been made with the formulation of SDG target 11.7 that we heard about here, but it's a matter of securing that this goal gets implemented. And we need to secure that Habitat 3 will address and secure this commitment to action. We are in the drafting committee at your disposal for any comments and discussions. We will meet regularly and we will also be participating in the different discussions. I look forward to working with all of you on this. Thank you very much.